Film out. The title of this music video is most likely referring to the act of taking the film out of an old film camera and, of course, processing and developing it. This matches with the theme of the lyrics, which seem to center around memories, and this theme is relevant to a lot of things. But today we are especially going to be breaking down this music video in the context of the BTS universe, in which the finding of the map of the soul, a major part of the storyline, centers around the idea of memories. And of course, I will tie this into the HYBE universe as a whole, or the Big Hit universe as it used to be called, and how it expands this universe and adds to things that we already knew and sort of gives us a new perspective on things. Hello, my friends and sunflowers. My name is Lena, and I am a HYBE theorist. So yeah, of course, that means I'm going to be breaking this down not only in terms of BTS, but also in terms of the other groups. So everyone. When the teasers for Film Out first dropped, everyone was quick to compare the cinematic parallels to Fake Love, for good reason. And I think this takes it a little bit further and gives us more context into the scenes that we've seen in the notes. First, there are two prevailing themes in this music video, time and memories. And they're very closely intertwined and kind of rely on each other. In order for one to exist, so must the other. In the BTS notes, which sort of details more about the story than just the music videos do, we learn that Jin, who seems to be trapped in a never-ending time loop of trying to rescue his friends from death and despair, is tasked with finding the map of the soul. And we learn that the map of the soul is tied in with this idea of memories, the trajectory of failures, successes, mistakes, and blunders of a person. In the notes, Jin kind of gathers all of the photos, and when he looks at them, they give him a headache, but he's able to, later on, he is able to sort of discover his own map of the soul. I think that this music video takes place in that time before he finds the map of the soul, and it's subtly hinted at that it's based on their state of mind as well. So on Jin's side of the room, everything is kind of covered with sheets as if it's unused and needs to be protected from dust. At the beginning, we see Jungkook and Jimin and Taehyung in this room before he enters, implying that they're there but only briefly, not enough to disturb the landscape of a room meant to be preserved. On the other side, the room is brightly lit and lived in. This is where memories are lively and can exist freely. It's something Jin is aware of that he's striving for, but it's separate from him, despite him trying to reach out and find it. I also believe that this is an alternate reality rather than just a memory, but I will cover that a little later. If you remember, I said that Film Out is about the film of a camera, and if you take film and break it down, it's essentially just many different photos of the same moment in succession, and it creates the illusion of movement. This is sung about in the song. From all the memories stored in my heart, I gather up the ones of you, link them together, gazing at them projected across the room. But this also references the notes again, where Jin actually lines up the photos of his friends and tries to remember and find his map of the soul. This is what allows them to progress forwards in time. But like I said, this music video takes place before he finds the map of the soul. Which brings us to the second major aspect of this music video. Time. The most definite representation of this is, of course, the hourglass. We see this early on both sides of the window. On the side that seems to be an ideal reality or memory, it's sitting upright on the table. The sand rests at the bottom. However, on Jin's side, we see it lying on its side at first, unable to flow from one side to the next. It's stuck. And this resting position of the hourglass adds to the theme that Jin himself is also stuck. This ties into later when we see Jin emerging from the door that seems to be floating in the sky. Even when he thinks he has control over it, such as being able to create a new timeline, we see he's still stuck when he tries to run away. Floating in this cloudy abyss, there are several other doorways, which presumably all lead to other failed timelines that Jin has gone through. As we've actually seen this doorway thing before, mostly in relation to the BTS Universe story game, although it's also in other HYBE universes, which I'll get to in a minute. The presence of floating doorways also tells me that this is happening within the realm of the subconscious. This is the Magic Island, the same area, space that Magic Shop exists. This means that this music video is more symbolic in nature, and the things that happen shouldn't mean that it's directly happening, but it references events that are happening. I don't even think they're aware that Magic Island could be a physical location, which is what we actually see in TXT's music videos. But yeah, while they're real events, they shouldn't necessarily be taken at face value. It's representative of what's going on in the subconscious I hope that makes sense. When Jin steps out into the clouds later in the music video, we see that it's during sunset, and more specifically around the time of the blue hour, which is when there are like the blue tones in the sky, and it's just a natural part of the sunset. Blue Hour is also a TXT song, and it has 2 different music videos, one in Korean and one in Japanese, which all focus on the end of an era right before a shift. In TXT's case, this is childhood itself. However, it seems that Jin never makes it past Blue Hour, this sunset part, because he has to go back in time towards the beginning of the day. He's quite literally stuck. This scene, however, brings to light a new possibility in terms of the HYBE universe that I've just never really been able to find answers for before. For example, if these doors in the sky are alternate timelines, then in theory, if you could find your way to one, you could get into that other timeline. This calls to mind TXT's Eternally music video. In the part where Kai sees the future, he is separated from his other members in the sky, and each of them stand in their own respective doorways. In the music video, Kai takes a step forward, implying he has the ability to walk across the chasm that separates them. So TXT usually operate on one singular timeline, they just rewind that same timeline. The possibility of doors leading to other timelines is actually a really good thing for TXT, because it means that they're not necessarily stuck with the mistakes they made in the timeline that they're currently in, such as the fire and the death of Yeonjun, which would mean that this is a solution to TXT's possible problem right now. And to further add to the idea that this is possibly connected, at the end of Kai's section of the Eternally music video, the same part with the sky and the doors, there is text that appears on the screen at the end of this section that says, "I reach out, but my hands touch nothing." And this is eerily similar to Film Out's lyrics, which say, "I reach out my hand and you suddenly disappear." We've also seen floating doors in teasers for Nuest's Nocturne, which took them to another world with like a mermaid and stuff. And we've seen doors just sort of physically take a person from one location to another that in theory shouldn't connect, but do because of the door. So it does seem that they have multiple uses in theory, but even if it's possible for Kai, for example, to walk across the sky in Eternally, it seems Jin either cannot do this or chooses not to, because he returns inside. So how does he create all of these doors anyway? I think this is intrinsically tied to the contract that Jin makes with the blue and green-eyed cat. He is offered the chance to save his friends and thus begins his cycle of time travel. However, as I talked about with TXT is rewinding time in one timeline, so the possibility of another timeline is good. But in Jin's case, he creates all these new little realities and timelines every time he goes back in time, and it's not a good thing for him. With time travel comes certain rules, as you can probably imagine. In order for Jin to actually create a new reality altogether, his time travel needs to be accompanied by the breaking of glass, which I think is actually the breaking of reality itself. This is why those timelines end up kind of like blowing up. Quite literally, like fake love, and of course here as well. And we have the whole cracking glass imagery in previous music videos and implied in the notes as well. And of course, that's why these timelines end up dead, because they literally crack. They're dead timelines. They're empty. So the glass in the room explodes, and that timeline is severed, and Jin is taken back to the beginning. Although that begs the question, why is it that he sees another parallel reality through the window here? Or is it possibly a memory, because we've seen that sort of implied before? I'll get to that. And why is it that certain members seem to notice him through the window? First, Jungkook. Jungkook seems to notice not only Jin, but also the hourglass that he holds. And he seems to understand what it actually means. Now, in the BTS notes, Jungkook feels really left out from the group. And he suspects that Jin has actually hit him with his car, and then that everyone else is kind of keeping it from him. And by the way, Jin doesn't even remember this event, and the other people don't even suspect that Jin hit him at all. So just keep that in mind for, I don't know, sometime in the future. And this whole scenario leads to a rather dubious ending for Jungkook, because he's not really happy in the end. He doesn't believe that Jin time traveled, which leads to this weird ending in the notes where Jungkook is floating in what he describes as sticky air, and then he also remembers a conversation that he had with the cat previously, possibly in another timeline, where it asks him, "It'll be more painful to live than to die. Would you like to live?" He does, of course, choose to live in that earlier conversation, but we have yet to see the true consequences of that. And that's not that crazy that this kind of timeline possibly seeps into his knowledge, because we see Taehyung get this kind of knowledge about timelines as well through his streams, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So Jungkook has actually met the cat in one of these timelines, at least, and it was after he got hit. So we know that he, in theory, knows about time travel and knows that it's not crazy. Yet the ending that we get in the notes implies that he doesn't believe Jin. So if this is a memory, then it wouldn't make sense for them all to be happy together and him also knowing about the time travel aspect. And then of course he doesn't believe Jin at the end, so why would he? Do you see my conundrum? He clearly acknowledges this hourglass, so what's going on here? I have a crazy wild theory about Jungkook. And it has to do with the fact that I think that these are quite literally mirrored timelines. In one version of reality, the one that we are told about in the notes, it follows Jin, and Jin is the one who can time travel. However, it ends up with Jungkook being kind of miserable at the end. However, what if there's a mirrored version of reality, the opposite side of this coin that we see, where Jungkook is the one who is time traveling? The trade-off might be that Jin in this reality is also miserable. Interestingly enough, we never see this mirror reality Jin's face. Like, we're aware that it's him. There's a close-up shot where it's him and not his body double, who, I'm sorry, but anyone who's ARMY can tell that that body double is not Jin. Is he even enjoying himself? You never are able to really gauge his expression. Is he enjoying himself, or is he just there, similar to how Jungkook is in Jin's timeline? More weight is put onto this thought because of this one line that Jungkook says, which kind of ends right as he fades away. And this line is, "I've barely made it by your side and found you." This happens right as Jin is reaching for him, so it's clear that they see each other in this moment, but disappear. Interestingly, Taehyung also seems to somehow still manage to walk in even after all this has been done, and is there to witness the moment that Jin disappears to him. This adds to the idea that he is an observer, since this can't be the Taehyung that was in that reality, because he disappeared with everyone else. But instead, he is a wanderer, a dreamer, if you will, since he dreams of these events. And he comes across this room and is able to see its final moments. Wow. Honestly, the concept and direction of just like this music video and pretty much all of the other music videos that exist that are BTS related, like, are so well thought out. It's genius. BTS is truly the best. Also, I would like to say that this song is written for a Japanese movie called Signal, and in this movie, the plot kind of will cover two different detectives who are like, one is in the future, one's in the past, and their stories kind of intertwine, and I'm sorry, but if that doesn't first of all match with this, and then also like loosely correlate to the BTS storyline, I would be really surprised. I honestly think they carefully choose the stories that they like associate with. It's written to encompass the BTS storyline, the storyline for the movie Signal, and of course in more general terms for you and me and people who are reading it who can relate to this idea. Really don't think that this is a coincidence because it has to do with like time stuff. Another part that's borderline genius is the part with Hoseok and Yoongi, where they're sitting back to back on a platform in the middle of a desert. Yoongi, who was tied to the idea of the shadow, is separated from Hoseok, who represents ego, only by the arch of a doorway. This shadow ego thing is from Carl Jung's theory of self-actualization, which is where the whole like map of the soul and everything comes from. And in fact, this actually immediately recreates that visual of the map of the soul using this diagram, where the doorway that separates the two would actually be the self. Interestingly, in many interpretations, this diagram of the map of the soul looks a lot like the round hourglass that both Jin and Jungkook have in this music video, which I sincerely doubt is a coincidence. In the end, Shadow and Ego reach towards each other, implying that they might be accepting one another, hence accepting the two opposite parts of the map of the soul. Interestingly, if we also think of this implying to the Jin and Jungkook situation, where the two rooms represent the outer and inner world, it makes a lot of sense. Jin's inner world is without memories and use because of the time loops, but the Jungkook side is still alive and thriving as it always does, the outer world. That's all I strictly have to say about BTS related stuff, but there is some more information that I want to drop on you guys based on the HYBE Universe and how this music video actually gives us more information about the HYBE Universe and other music groups, so let's go into that. First, the shadowed eclipse-like effect that happens when Jin enters the room for the first time. This, interestingly, causes time to freeze temporarily while Jin watches through the window. This frozen time thing also happens in ENHYPEN's Let Me In which a similar beam of light shines down, like an eclipse passing over, and seems to freeze time to allow things to happen around in that moment. I wonder if this is like a new aspect to the HYBE Universe that they're like sharing with us now. Also, color. Yes, color. I talk about colors a lot because colors are important, in my opinion. The Film Out music video features the 3 primary colors, blue, yellow, and red, and is very, very prominent. The red happens when the room blows out. We get singing scenes in yellow and certain other parts in blue. Previously, blue equals anything magical or imaginary, which is ironic considering we see Jin standing with all of the members under a blue light, because that's what he wants. It's an imagination for him. It's a dream, if you will. So that checks out, unfortunately. Next is red, which usually has to do with reality, the reality of a situation or the truth that you have to look at, how things must be. If you think about like the Matrix, where you have the blue pill, which is like, oh, stay in the dream, and then the red pill where you wake up. This is the same thing. You see the true nature of things when the red light shows. That explains why the room ends up red when it blows in, because the reality of the situation has come in to break the illusion. That's really sad. Yellow, however, I'm not as sure about in terms of the color and what it could mean when they show it on screen. It seems to happen mostly in solo shots, specifically with Jimin and with Taehyung. It might refer to stay gold, and that this is not actually yellow but a gold, which I could see. The coloring is also really similar to the Stay Gold music video, so I mean that's a possibility. In that case, it might signify something having to do with like motivation. Especially since the lyrics, when the color is shown on screen, generally have to do with like positive memories. So things that keep you going. I'm not really sure yet. I don't have like a one word thing, like how blue equals magic and red equals reality. I don't know what yellow could equal. But if you have thoughts about this, please let me know. Anyways, that's all that I have for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed and that it was, you know, interesting and stuff and you learned stuff. Why am I so bad at this? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more theories around the HYBE universe. All of my social media is linked in the description below, including my Discord, which you should totally join. And of course, I wanted to give a huge shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Rally Car, Alicia S, Lame Game Hero, Savage 96er, Jade Taylor, TXT Lover, and Amanda Strickland. Thanks for all your support. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, my friends. Bye!